Thank you so much, Jesse. Yeah, and definitely hearing Zero be a little bit critical after that series of himself and his team in general with some chokes that maybe have happened, but the hard points just absolutely insane in that series. We got to look at that first one. Do you think choke is an important word to bring up in this one chance?
Yeah, for eRa, definitely. It's got to be. Well, you know, the first map, I think you could make it a choke either way because obviously Red Reserve had a very nice lead at their disposal. But then, yeah, eRa, like, they had the game in the bag towards the end. Like, they did everything right from the second to third hill. Like, that one rotation could have won in the game. They had the streaks. They had the stars aligned for them. And, yeah, I don't know. It's a choke for both teams.
Yeah, I mean, early on, though, it's just full control for Red Reserve. And if they don't have this hot start, the game is completely different. Josh really steps up, and he's a player yesterday we were considering as our MVP, right, a potential candidate. So Josh really stepping it up. We know he's the sort of vocal leader on this team, but when he's able to put up those numbers, it makes it so tough to beat this Red Reserve team. But here you go. You get over towards this point where it's 220 to about 130. We go to that lower turret hill, and that's where really eRa Eternity starts to bring it back. Then you get towards this Castle Road hill, and I mean, these streaks from Pharaoh. You thought this is it, but I feel like he calls in the mortar strike just a little bit too early. So here comes that glide bomb. He puts it down, picks up Zero. You can see he has a mortar. He decides to just put it right in after that exact moment. I feel like he should have waited for that contest, but as you said, the potential spawns might have been closer. He wasn't too sure, but it just came down to those final few seconds. eRa almost able to clutch up. Yeah, I mean, you could say the mortar cost him the game, and that very well might be true, but I think to his credit, if he assumed they spawned on the other side of bridge, it would have been a little bit better and more understandable, especially for in that moment to just like, it's so difficult to have the state of the mind of where do I call this in? Because again, the mortars, you don't get the ping, so it's not easy at all. You could also say, why did eRa just not rotate to next? Because at a certain point, Red Reserve needed 5. So once you have like 7 or 8 seconds, you got one guy in the hill. Okay, they're guaranteed not to win on this hill. Let's rotate to next. They were slow on that. Or you could say, hey, let's not go down 130 seconds or whatever it is. So a lot of different things eRa could have done. You could chalk it up to streaks. You could chalk it up to bad rotations early in the game, or just not rotating at all towards the end. But obviously, Red Reserve, Josh played well. Credit to both teams in certain capacities. But yeah, it's chokes all around. Yeah, I think it was just a slow start. You obviously saw Bevels and Ricky pretty negative, right? And it's obviously tough when your main AR player in Ricky, if he's double negative at some points, it's really tough to sort of open up lanes for your submachine gun players like Bevels. Yes, Decimate and Pharaoh, they were performing well, but you know what's going to happen if your ARs on Gibraltar aren't stepping up. Bevels having a tough game, but they almost brought it back. Yeah, Bevels still being that player that you really did put a lot of emphasis on. But 2 seconds going to determine that first map. Then we go ahead and we jump in that second map. But I have a feeling when we get to Hardpoint, we're going to be talking about streaks quite a bit more. But what went down, Chance, inside of this S&D?
Good game back and forth. I think overall eRa did a much better job of just having different strategies. I think on offense, they broke out at least like 3 or 4 different strats. And keep in mind, they only have like 6 offensive rounds to work with, if that. So they had a moment where they're over there hitting the A-bomb site, pushing through. Pharaoh picks up easy cleanup kills, gets the bomb down. They tried one round, to just smoke off the U-cut, and then they sent their entire team past it, and Red Reserve played it very well and wiped them all out, and then they had rounds where they'd go to B. So eRa mixed it up, made some big plays. Decimate obviously had a fantastic game.
Yeah, Decimate was the player I was going to highlight, not only in this game, but the first map as well. And Joe, I was about to say, like, Bevels was one of those players that we were looking at eRa, but it seemed like Decimate just really came to his own in this series in a lot of ways. Yeah, I mean, we talked about eRa and their search and destroy, and the reason is because players like Decimate and Pharaoh, and when they're able to have those individual performances like we just saw on that map number 2, it's so hard to beat these guys, right? I mean, they know exactly where they need to set up. I mean, search and destroy is pretty much a step-based process. They know what step 1, you have to try and get map control. Step 2 on defense or offense is either planting that bomb or retaking it. They know where they need to be in every single situation. Such a good search and destroy team. And I mean, Red Reserve, they were undefeated in that map up to this point. So a great win for eRa. Then we go ahead and we jump over to map number 3, and the CTF took place on London Docks, Chance.
Yeah, and it was a pretty back and forth game. It was basically Red, at the half they go up 3-0, and then the second half, eRa, well, it looked like they were going to turn the game around, but ultimately Red Reserve just a little bit too strong. And frankly, the first half was pretty brutal as well, because there were so many separate moments where it seemed like eRa could make the stop, or Red Reserve had to make just the clutch kill to get the caps in, but they consistently were able to do it. And then, of course, even when eRa built up a little bit of momentum, there was like the final minute where Red Reserve, they just like blew the game open.
Yeah, and then right here, I mean, you have the score streak coming from Joe. A ton of streaks, but we talked about it time and time again. Streaks aren't always the strongest thing on London Dosh due to really the building placement. It gets 3-2, and there's one more attack. I don't remember the exact moment, but it was like a 3-on-2 in the Red Reserve base. Josh picks up 2 huge kills. That really allows them to get middle map control, and then after that, Red Reserve just ran away with it the last 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah, we're going to see just that as we play out the last couple of seconds here on that CTF. And Josh and Bevel's going to be the 2 players that really stand out in this one. But map 4 is the map that I really am excited to talk about here. We already talked about the first hard point. That one obviously very close. Jack said it. Between the 2 hard points, it was 7 seconds that separated these 2 squads combined. But that map 4, a little bit heartbreaking in a few ways. I want to talk about the streaks, though, first. Obviously, we've given eRa a lot of flack for their streaks already, Merc.
Fairly so.
Yeah, I think it is fairly so. How about in this one? Do you think that that's one of the first things that jumps off the page?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to it. That one parking lot hill, I mean, there was like 7 streaks for eRa Eternity to use. They decide to use a fighter pilot, a glide bomb. Fighter pilot on that parking lot hill, it's not the best thing to really use. I mean, there's a lot of cover. You typically get the hill guy, but that's it due to the building surrounding it. Just call the artillery down. You would have negated the time from Red Reserve, allowed your team to push. Instead, they used like 3 or 4 of them. They didn't get any kills. You go over towards that outpost hill. They then get no kills on that. It just, again, look at this scoreboard. I mean, Red Reserve, they were getting outsled. You have Joe at 18 and 31. eRa, everything was going right for them, but they just weren't able to clutch up once again.
I mean, if they held that streak too, I mean, if they actually call in the fighter on lookout post, all of a sudden they're probably looking at a quad kill on the rotation, and they're just not able to pick that up.
I mean, to Red Reserve's credit, they had that one play where all of them switched to mountain before going onto the open hill. So that's one fighter pilot. That's completely understandable to not get anything. But you have 3 full sets of streaks, and continuously you get absolutely nothing at it. Like, it is impressive how you can be that bad with them. I mean, you talk about glide bombs that you control, you aim it wherever you want, and they're missing people. They're not, it's just, they're using them in bad spots, they're not using them well. Everything you could do well with a score streak, they're just not. Like, literally, the most important thing I think for this team to do is just take, okay, on this hill, here's how we use our streaks, on this hill, and go through every single map, every single situation, because, like, it is bad.
Yeah, I mean, right after that game ended, right, you could read Ricky's lips. Why did we use 3 different streaks on that parking lot hill? We had 2 artilleries to use. Again, just negate time. You don't have spawns for it. Just put the artillery down. Red Reserve, they won't earn time. If you get a set of kills, that's full control for you. Save those fighter pilots for Winery or for, you know, that 4th hill. It's so strong there instead. Absolutely nothing for them.
Definitely a tough break, but